What's up, Flock Forever? This is Chase Coburn here. Before we officially move on to NFL training camp, Ravens training camp, Ravens season preview, all of this types of content we're going to be seeing over these next few weeks until the season starts, I want to do something fun. Ravens quarterback Lamar Jackson entering his 9th season. Based on the 8 we've seen so far, what was his best? What was his worst? Let's rank all of them from worst to first here today, right here on Flock Forever. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Please subscribe, follow, share, do what you need to do to keep up with all the content we have coming out soon right here on Flock Forever. And if you're not following the main account we're collaborating with right here, my own personal channel, we got a ton of fun coverage over there that you're not going to want to miss out on. So please be sure to subscribe and turn that notification bell on both channels so you don't miss any fun content coming up soon. All right. Number 8, the worst season of Lamar Jackson's career as a starter here in Baltimore was 2018, Lamar Jackson's rookie season. And obviously he showed some flashes, which is why we have seen the version of Lamar that we see here today. But this was an unpolished version of Lamar. The highest bad throw rate of his career, lowest completion rate, lowest passer rating, lowest touchdown rate, lowest success rate, and also his highest pressure rate. He also led the NFL in fumbles as a quarterback. And he, again, was really unpolished as a runner. But he did show enough flashes. Took over Baltimore at 4-5, went 6-1 as a starter, led them to a backdoor division title, and rushed for 695 yards. So he showed enough to where the next season, John Harbaugh could keep his job, and Eric DeCosta could really begin to retool and begin to build this offense around Lamar Jackson for his historic 2019 campaign, which we'll get to later on. But I think that's pretty obvious that his rookie season, where he didn't even start the full year, wasn't even on the radar to start that year, it's not shocking that was his worst season. His worst full season as a starter, to me, excluding the rookie year, was 2022, which was his 5th season in the league, right before he signed that big record-breaking contract extension with Baltimore ahead of the 2023 season. I do think the fierce contract negotiations overshadowed the production on the field and in part really hurt this team as a whole. In this season, Lamar had the lowest completion rate of his 7 full seasons as a starter, excluding the rookie year, lowest completion rate, lowest yards per attempt, lowest success rate. I mean, he was still reeling and dealing at times. That included winning the AFC Offensive Player of the Month in September, those first 3 games against the Jets, against the Dolphins, against the Patriots. He was unbelievable, but he did look less explosive on the ground. This was a season where Lamar put on a little bit more weight, so I don't think the threat of the run was as strong. He just didn't take over games like we're accustomed to seeing. And if you exclude those 3 fantastic games in September, it was an under 62% completion rate, 7 passing touchdowns, 5 picks, and 80.7 passer rating. Now, some of those stats are misleading. He was still a good quarterback, just not the elite version we're accustomed to seeing from Lamar Jackson. He still ended up receiving that 5-year, $260 million deal. And thank goodness he did, because he's shown so much since then where he's taken his game to the next level and proven that he is one of the elite quarterbacks in the National Football League. But this was certainly, for me, his worst full season as a starter when you exclude his rookie season. His 6th best season was 2021. This was the year where every single person was injured, his 4th season in the league, and that ended up including himself. This is the one season for me for Lamar Jackson where the counting stats just can't tell the full story. He was tasked with one of the hardest jobs of any quarterback I've actually ever seen in this era, and he was transcendent for me before he went down with injury. Both of his running backs, J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards, were injured. The secondary was depleted. The defense was one of the worst in the league. And so he consistently had to come back and make plays like he had never had to before in his entire career. Jackson set career highs in game-winning drives and fourth-quarter comebacks with 4 each, and that included erasing 2 score deficits in 3 separate games and turning them into wins. That Indianapolis game, obviously the biggest one, they were down, I want to say 19 points, and led them all the way back in the 4th quarter, one player of the week. He was heroic down the stretch of games, and he had Baltimore, even with all the injuries and all the inconsistencies, they were the number 1 seed in the AFC despite all those injuries. And then the Ravens lost their final 5 games once Tyler Huntley was under center, and they ended up missing the playoffs. But a lot of people forget that while the stats don't tell the full story, 16 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, lowest passer rating of his career, excluding his rookie season, what people forget is the amount of injuries and the amount of work that he was tasked with, and I still felt like he did a decent job. And if you take away a few poor games, it looks really solid. It was just 1 or 2 bad games that really did the damage on his season-long statistics. His 5th best season for me was this past year in 2025, a rare down season that I actually think could be attributed to injuries. Last year's season for Lamar was not an elite campaign. I think he is an elite quarterback, but he didn't have an elite campaign last year. He has excuses, right? The offensive line was poor. He was playing through injury from week 1 and on, but he just wasn't the same player. And you have to take that into account when you are ranking each of his seasons. 2nd lowest completion rate of his 7 full seasons, 2nd highest bad throw rate, lowest on target percentage, and by far his worst season as a runner. We're used to seeing Lamar rush for 700, 800, 900, 1,000 yards. The rushing success rate was below 50% for the first time in his career, under 350 yards in a single season for the first time in his career. He just wasn't that same dynamic runner that we are accustomed to. And part of that was he had nagging injuries, the hamstring, the ankle, the foot, the leg, other lower body injuries, which certainly worsened his athleticism. I would expect Lamar Jackson to be back to his old form. And I will say, even in a season where, to Lamar standards, he didn't meet those staggeringly high expectations, he was still fourth in passer rating, fourth in yards per attempt, third in touchdown rate, and first in yards per completion. So I still think it was a very, very solid, respectable, dominant season for Lamar Jackson, just not the MVP level that we see more here toward the top in his best seasons of his entire career. In fourth place, I have Lamar Jackson's 2020 season. This was his second full year in the league, third overall, and the year following his unanimous MVP campaign. I actually think this is Lamar Jackson's most underrated season of his entire career. I don't think passing-wise he was as prolific as 2025, which comes right before it in the ranking here, but I do think his ability on the ground separates him. Overall, third in touchdown rate, 11th in rating, and while I don't think he was as great of a thrower, he still had a lower bad throw rate and a higher on-target rate than he had in 2025. Again, I think it's his most underrated season. A lot of people don't know this. He finished with an approximate value of 18. It's an advanced stat. Think of the WAR of the National Football League by Pro Football Reference. It was actually tied with Patrick Mahomes for the highest in the National Football League. It is one of 4 seasons where he's been the leader among all quarterbacks in approximate value. All 4 seasons in which Lamar has been relatively healthy, he's led the league in approximate value. It just shows how transcendent he is when he is on the field during the regular season. He finished 11-4 as a starter, despite some really inconsistent offensive weapons for me. Mark Andrews had a down year. Marquise Brown didn't take a major leap. Mark Ingram fell completely off a cliff, and they had to try to ease in the rookie J.K. Dobbins in the back half of the year. Des Bryant was catching touchdowns at a point. It was rough for that Baltimore offense, but Jackson was still producing at a high level and, again, providing as much value as any other quarterback in the National Football League. Still had a 26-9 touchdown to interception ratio, a passer rating just below 100, and finished with 1,000 rushing yards for the second time in his career, the highest yards per attempt in the entire NFL that season. Add on 7 rushing touchdowns. It wasn't the MVP level like we saw in his best 3 seasons, but it is certainly the best non-MVP level season we've seen from Lamar Jackson in the National Football League. In third place, I have his 2023 season where he won league MVP. This is right off of that contract I talked about. New offensive system with Todd Monken, new wide receiver 1 in Zay Flowers. Lamar does really well with change, which we'll get to ahead of 2026. And I think that was evident here in 2023. Jackson anchored the top team in the NFL with a prodigious 13-3 record as a starter. The Ravens offense was among the league leaders in yards and points scored. And the reason why he won MVP, guys, he was doing all that. He was the centerpiece of this dominant offense with Gus Edwards as the running back 1 and a rookie Flowers as the wide receiver 1. And Mark Andrews missed the back end of the regular season. And that is where Baltimore had to go through their toughest gauntlet. Los Angeles Rams, they were a playoff team. Jacksonville, when they were in the race for the number 1 seed. San Francisco on the road on Christmas. Miami, they were in the running for the number 1 seed until the Ravens pretty much knocked the life out of them. And so in their toughest stretch of the season, the Ravens had Keaton Mitchell go down with an injury, one of their top running backs, had his top tight end go down with an injury, and yet he was still beating so many top teams. The main reason why he was the MVP is because he consistently played up to competition against the best. And this is what I try to explain to people. His stats against playoff teams that year, in 9 games he played against playoff teams, he was 7-2 with a 67% completion, over 295 yards a game, 15 touchdowns, 4 receptions, and 112 rating. Consistently against the best of the best, Jackson was transcendent. It was one of the more polished versions we've ever seen from Lamar Jackson when he was on point. It is just slightly below his 2019 campaign because he wasn't as consistently dominant as he was during his unanimous MVP. But I will say the biggest kind of asterisk on Lamar Jackson season is everyone says he shouldn't have won MVP. And sure, 24 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. That is not the typical statistical output of a league MVP at the quarterback position. But it was a weaker quarterback year statistically. And yeah, in that season, Lamar Jackson was the MVP. It was controversial to some, but I think it was abundantly clear. His team performance, as we just talked about, his ability against the best of the best. And again, it was a weaker quarterback year, but that's not the point. He was better than the other quarterbacks in that year. No one has ever won an MVP alongside another MVP finalist. So that eliminates Christian McCaffrey and Brock Purdy, 2 of the finalists on the same team. Josh Allen received the other first place vote, but was extremely turnover prone and had an awful stretch during the midseason. And Dak Prescott, who finished second, didn't get a first place vote. Probably in the best case of anybody not named Lamar for MVP, he just wasn't at his level. Lamar received 49 of the 50 first place votes. If you have 49 respected, credible officials and voters for this award, 49 out of 50 said that this guy was the MVP. This isn't like the 25 race or the 24 race where it was a few votes that separated it. This was a dominating result. in favor of Lamar Jackson. And those who don't think he should have been the MVP just aren't acknowledging the non-statistical ability in which Lamar Jackson put into this team. That what the box score doesn't tell you. They weren't acknowledging that. It was one of Lamar's best seasons, coming in at number 3. And number 2, I have his 2019 season, his first full season in the league where he won a unanimous MVP. Not much more needs to be said here. Jackson and the Ravens felt really invincible in this campaign. And as someone who was really beginning my hardcore fandom here in this 2019 season, it was unbelievable how great they were. He was 13-2 as a starter, 6-1 touchdown interception ratio, 36-6, leading the league, 36 passing touchdowns, and a 9% touchdown rate, folks. We don't talk about that enough. That's insane. Also completed 66% of his passes. That was well above league average that year. And for me, he did that, led the league in passing touchdowns, and set the single-season quarterback rushing record as a 1,200-yard runner, 6th in the entire league in rushing yards, and led the league in passing touchdowns. 3rd lowest bad throw rate of his career, 2nd highest on target rate, 1st in yards per scramble. And he really had only one bad game. Week 5 against Pittsburgh, he had 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions, still ended up leading a drive to hit a game-winning field goal on the road against a division rival. Outside of that, he had 42 total touchdowns and 5 turnovers. When you look at 14 of the 15 games Lamar Jackson played that season. 2 games with a perfect pass rating, 9 games with a passer rating above 100, including 7 of his last 8 games. And it is worth noting, Jackson did this with an aging Mark Ingram, a rookie Hollywood Brown, a second-year Mark Andrews, and Willie Snead, Nick Boyle, Hayden Hurst, Seth Roberts. Who are these people? I love these guys. Trust me, they're my boys. I love this Baltimore Ravens team. But Lamar Jackson was carrying the offensive load and led Baltimore to one of the greatest seasons in modern NFL history. This isn't an excess of talent that Lamar Jackson had with him, and yet he still had such great success. The only way I could describe the season to you, you just had to have been there. It was one of the most dominant, efficient, productive, best dual-threat seasons we have ever seen. But I had to specify one of the best, because the greatest season we ever saw from Lamar Jackson, the greatest season we ever saw from Lamar Jackson was 2024, which should have been his 3rd league MVP. 2007 Brady, 2011 Rodgers, 2011 Breeze, 2013 Manning, 2018 Mahomes. Those 5 seasons, some of the most historic in NFL history, are the only ones this century that I think can compare to what Lamar Jackson put together in 2024 and in 2019 for that matter. I put 2022 Mahomes up there as well. It is in that echelon of the best seasons by a quarterback in the 21st century. I can't explain to you how dominant he was. Folks, he led the league in everything. Touchdown rate, touchdown interception ratio, yards per attempt, adjusted yards per attempt, net yards per attempt, adjusted net yards per attempt, passer rating, QBR, approximate value. He had 4,100 passing yards and was one of the most accurate in the league. And oh yeah, he also had over 900 rushing yards. A bad game for Lamar Jackson in 2024. A bad game was 2 touchdowns, 0 interception. That was considered a bad game for him. 13 games. We talked about 9 games with a 100 passer rating in his unanimous MVP campaign. 13 games with a 100 or better passer rating. Only 2 games with a below 90 rate. 90 pass rating is about league average. Only 2 games the entire year was below league average. In 13 of the 17 he played, he was in the elite of the elite. He threw 4 interceptions the whole season, guys. 3 of his 4 were deflected off of his teammates' hands. And many of them were 50-50 catches, let alone INTs. He was so great at taking care of the football, but also was making the explosive plays down the field. Why did Jackson not win MVP? Because apparently he had Derrick Henry. Well, nobody talks about how Jackson made Henry so much better. Derrick Henry went from 1,100 yards, what some analysts, not myself, but what some analysts were calling washed, and out of his prime. Those same people were then voting against Lamar Jackson for MVP because of Derrick Henry. But when you go from 1,100 to 1,900 as an older running back, that's not from a coincidence. That's because there is somebody in that offense that is creating those open lanes. And it was Lamar Jackson and the value and the presence of which he coveted on that Baltimore offense. Jackson dealt with more drops than Josh Allen, a worse offensive line than Josh Allen, yet because Jackson made teammates around him look better than they actually were, he lost out in the league MVP award. Objectively, he had a better season, which is why it was his 3rd first-team All-Pro campaign. Folks, I can't stress this enough. 2024 Lamar was something else. We may never see a season like that from Lamar Jackson again. We could see some great campaigns. We may never see a season like that again. But one of the all-time greats at QB, Lamar Jackson, can always hold his hat on one of the greatest quarterback seasons that we have ever seen in the National Football League. And now as he heads into his 2026 NFL season, can Lamar replicate that? What is still in store for him? Where will that 26 season rank on this list next year? And that's the fun of the game. And that's what we're going to figure out when we come back next year here on Flock Forever. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to today's episode of Flock Forever. Please be sure to subscribe, turn that notification bell on. We don't want you to miss any fun coverage we got coming out on the Baltimore Ravens. Follow all my social media platforms. You can find them at Chase Coburn across all socials. Follow at Flock Forever 852 across all socials. Signing off, I'm your host, Chase Coburn, saying so long here from Flock Forever.